Miles Sanders in the second round is totally a reach.
All right, we are back with the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy podcast. I'm joined here by the former champion, Michael. How you doing?
What's up, man? I'm doing well.
Good to hear, good to hear. And we are also joined by a special guest today. You may know him as your commissioner. You may know him as the only league manager with 3 wins, undefeated. And if you haven't figured out who he is by now, you may know him as the guy with the hottest mom in the friend group. CJ, welcome in.
Wow, thanks a lot, guys. Hey, it's a pleasure. Big fan of the show.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Man, pretty wild week this week. Are you on cloud 9 after winning 3 straight?
It feels good. Definitely some shakiness to it. A lot of things need to start coming together, or else it's going to be a tough road ahead. But obviously, 3-0 going into it feels great.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I mean, 3-0. Even the points for like middle of the road, but the fact that you're 3-0, you take that 10 out of 10 times over, being where Justin is, right, where he's 1-2, but he's the leading point scorer in the league, right?
Hey, I mean it's rough, but I mean go ahead and look at Justin's team. He's going to be all right.
Yeah, but for the point, just 3-0. I don't care how you get there. I don't care if you just get lucky all 3 weeks or if you dominate all 3 weeks. 3-0 is 3-0, as we said in the previous.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the first 14 weeks you're just battling off to get wins. So it doesn't matter how you get them. Once you're in playoffs, that record doesn't matter anymore. So good work there, CJ. I think most seasons it takes about 7 wins to get in playoffs. So you're almost halfway there. All right,
buddy.
Okay. And for anyone listening, just so you know, we're kind of going through a new system here. We're recording through Zoom. So it may be choppier since this is our first stab at it, but hopefully everything goes smoothly. Let's go ahead and dive into some updates. We had tons of injuries happen this past week. Well, at least tons to the big names. Michael, how about you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we all know about the CMC injury. I will say for Chris, I don't know what the rest of the season looks like. It sounds like it's not going to be anything more than 4 weeks. But what I will say is his season is no longer about having fun and just scoring a bunch of points. He's going to have to scrap every single week now. I went through last year. It's just a brutal situation. So we'll see what he can do. I don't know if it's trade season yet, but I do think it's going to have to be, whether it's a big for Chuba Hubbard or if it's just trying to make some trades to make the other things going, it's going to be what it is. As far as Dalvin Cook, the big injury, I don't think that this is a long-term one either. So I think Matt just kind of has to ride the wave a little bit. I think he should be good by week 5, though.
Yeah, I agree. And Matt's in a better spot than Chris because he has the 2 wins. The scary part with CMC is the hamstring injury, and hamstrings generally linger. Do you think he'll come back and immediately get a full workload, or do you think they'll ease him back in and he really won't be full, number 1 overall pick potential until 6 weeks, 7 weeks from now?
Yeah, and CJ, I want to get your input on this as well, but I something's gonna have to change, and it's just the fact something's gonna have to change, and it's you can't give that guy, you can't give a 205-pound frame 30 touches a game. They're going to have to change their system a little bit, whether it works in Chuba Hubbard more, whether they get Robbie Anderson involved more with the screen game, something like that. I just think that the Panthers have run into the situation multiple times already where that guy's going to need to take some of the workload off.
Yeah, especially now with all the pieces coming together with their defense. They've got a ton of weapons. Sam Darnold's looking like the Jets are completely behind him, so they're going to have to figure something out with their system, spread the ball around a little bit more. They can't just keep destroying that poor man.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, who else did we lose? A.J. Brown? Did you talk about that?
Yeah, I don't know too much about A.J. Brown. I know it's another hamstring issue. It sounds pretty similar to CMC, where it's going to be week to week. I think Austin's in full tilt mode. I think he had, that big week against me in week 2. But other than that, it's been a couple duds. So I really don't know what's going to be the rest of the season for Austin. But I think he's going to have to start making some moves. I think he's in a different spot than Chris right now.
I agree. Austin's team appears to be Kamara, Murray, and then some ass. So We'll see what he does.
Whole lot of ass.
Whole lot of ass. So we'll see what he does, but he does seem reluctant to trade. I don't even know if he has enough capital to trade. CJ, if you were in Austin's shoes, what would you do?
Sell the farm, man. Get your.
Yeah, it's
You hear
time
that,
to mortgage
Austin?
the future.
Yeah, so if I were Austin, I would sell Justin Jefferson for sure. I'd get rid of Kyler Murray right off the bat, and then just go ahead and give someone Alvin Kamara because the season's over.
Jeez, week 3. So I want to start doing a new segment wherever we highlight whoever's the highest score and whoever is the lowest scorer of the week. So we'll start off with the lowest scorer. All right, and the lowest score for this week was our former Sacco, Joshua Durant. And this kind of leads me into my next question. So Josh has had
real quick, are we just totally out on Austin because Austin was actually our lowest scorer for week 3?
Was he really?
So are we
I just assumed it was Josh
belittling
Austin? How many?
So
Austin
scored 90.64 and Josh actually managed 98. So
oh my gosh.
I think they
I'm so sorry, Josh.
for since this is the inaugural, highs and lows segment that we're going to do, I think we should just talk about both of them for a little bit.
I agree. We already touched on Austin, but Austin gets shit on. You were the worst. Pull your shit together. My bad, Josh. But are you worried about Josh? Josh has had 2 pretty rough weeks in a row now. You took one of his best players and gave him some trash.
Yeah.
Do you think he still has room to be a competitive team, or are you starting to think this team looks like a train wreck?
No, I'm starting to get worried. And this is usually I feel like patience is always a virtue in fantasy football. I think you see a year after year when people go 0-2, 0-3, 1-3, whatever the case may be, they get real panicked really early on. If I were Josh right now, I would be looking to make moves. I wouldn't be in full panic mode, but I would be trying to make Deebo Samuel. I'd try to turn him into 2 pieces that I could start. I would try to turn either Nick Chubb or that package of Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. I try to package those guys and try to create more points elsewhere. I will say,
he's also got James Robinson coming off of a huge week, so this is a great opportunity for him to sell high.
Yeah, I mean, there are options for Josh, but what I'm looking at right now does not give me room to be excited. I think if you play Trenton and that with that stack and they managed to score, I think Tyreek Hill was under 10 points. You got to beat them. If Trenton's only scoring 105, those are free weeks that you got to win, and you just got to be able to at least get your team to a 115 average, and then you should be good to go. So.
Yeah, I agree. I'm worried about Josh. His team has a lot of downside. I think he has a pretty high variance team, but also not a lot of high output players, which usually translates to consistently scoring in the low hundreds, which won't get you a lot of wins.
Right. CJ, real quick, are you high on Kirk Cousins? Because he seems to be the darling of fantasy so far the first 3 games of the year.
I mean, just think about it right now. The man is supporting 3 wide receivers, and a tight end just comes in there this week and drops 20 points as well. So that's got to convert to good long-term fantasy points for Kirk Cousins. Let's see if he can continue what the road he's been on.
All right, now let's go to the highest scorer of the week.
Yeah, I am the cream, the cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better than the Macho Man Randy Savage. On balance, off balance.
Okay, and the highest score was Justin Blackburn. I think I got that one actually right this time. Justin continues to put up an egregious amount of points. And I'm starting to wonder, I mean, his team's starting to look pretty good. Brandon Cooks might be the steal of the draft, in my opinion. I mean, he is putting up great wide receiver 1 consistently type numbers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the only guy that comes to mind that may challenge him for steal of the draft would maybe be Jamar Chase. I think you have to expect eventually that there's going to be a rookie drop off. I think, coverages start to shift a little bit more over to him. But other than that, that's the only one who I can think of that even competes in terms of where they were drafted with Brandon Cooks. So right now it's the steal of the draft. I think Justin also proved that tight end in the first round was not too much of a reach. I think Travis Kelce is just a lock it in stud tight end that gives him a cheat code every week. DeAndre Swift's actually been better than we thought. So we severely underestimated DeAndre Swift, and Josh Allen, more of those 45-point games are actually on the way. So Justin's sitting at 1-2. The league should be worried.
Yeah, his team's just looking really pretty. I mean, if I would have told you at the start of the season, DeAndre Swift dealing with weight issues, that he's going to be the number 3 wide receiver so far on the year, you would have told me I was crazy. But yeah, I mean, Justin's just looking good all across the board. Brandon Cooks can't be stopped. Travis Kelce is still popping off, even far beyond all these other tight ends that are having great weeks. So there's not really any holes in his team at the moment.
Yeah, and I will say, yeah, Josh Allen is a stud. I will say the 16-point kicker game, it's a little bit of a fluff. So I think that is something to look into. You can't expect 16 points from your kicker going forward.
Kickers need to be eliminated, man.
Yeah, it sounds like we might get the votes for that next season. We'll see, but it's too much of a factor that even though fantasy are already making stretches on who your picks are, kicker is something you literally have no shot at guessing whatsoever. But other than that, yeah, Justin's team looks money. I will say, I think on your point on Jamar Chase, he seems really touchdown dependent right now. He's not a high reception guy, so he will have more variance. As far as steal the draft is concerned, obviously Cooper Kupp is in the conversation, and fuck you for not even mentioning him. Yeah, because he is that boy.
We knew Cooper Kupp was good though. No one ever doubted Cooper's Kupp talent. I think if you're talking about you got him in the 4th round, that's a phenomenal steal. Him sitting at receiver 1 right now. You do expect a little bit of a tapering off. I think defenses kind of shift coverage a little bit more over to Cooper. But he is so versatile, working out of the slot, working outside. He's good as a run blocker, so he gets to be on those downs that even, you're expecting a run. Cooper Kupp is a steal so far.
No doubt about it.
That boy. All right, let's keep it going since we're on a time limit here. We have free agency coming up. Waivers are going to go through. Everyone's putting their bids in today. Obviously, the big fish is Chuba Hubbard, who has a fun name, in my opinion. But obviously, I would think Chris would spend the most money on Chuba. Hastings made me look like a fool last time I said that, but he doesn't have the capital to even go for it. Anyone that will even come close to whatever Chris bids.
Yeah, CJ, you want to tackle this one first?
Give me a minute. I'm trying to get the screen to work.
So I would say that Chuba Hubbard, I have $75 on him right now. I don't think I'm going to get him. If that puts into perspective of what I'm seeing is going to happen, I think Chris has to put money, and I've actually already sent him a trade offer to give him more capital to do that for one of his bench players. We'll see if that goes down, but I think Chris is actually working behind the scenes. So if I had to put money on it right now, I'd say Chris actually ends up with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be Chris in the end. Josh is really the one that could go ahead and be the dark horse and pull the upset here, having over $100 in his budget. We'll see if he decides to blow the load or not. I don't know how much he's struggling, how much he's freaking out after the first 3 weeks. So we'll see what ends up happening.
You know what?
We might put some rules in place on making bets with fab money moving forward as well.
Yeah, that actually is a good point, CJ. I think Josh, because you look at his team, he's got the Browns running backs, which you could start both of them. He's got James Robinson, who's a stud. He's got Chris Carson. He's he's probably the most deep at running back in our league right now. I still would bid for him. If you're sitting at 1 and 2, your team doesn't look good, you're not picking him up to play him. You're picking him up for trade capital. So I would hope Josh reads into that and actually does put an aggressive offer in.
You're absolutely right. And don't sleep on Trenton either. He doesn't necessarily need him, but the man just likes to throw a wrench in other people's plans and stir the pot. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any other free agents that we think are going to be hot commodities? Who had some big games? Gesicki had a pretty big game. Do you think anyone kind of jumps on that performance?
Yeah, I think whoever does is just going to be disappointed. I've been on the Gesicki train for 2 years now. He pops off for 20 points and then goes for 0 the next week. You just can't trust with that offense. The one thing you'd be banking on with picking up Gesicki would be Jacoby Brissett, dinking and dunking, but there's not too much upside with that. I will say even with you got other people like Tommy Tremble with the recent trade of Dan Arnold. I think a lot of people are thinking that he's going to take on a bigger workload. Dalton Schultz just had a big game with the Cowboys, but there's too many targets. There's lots of what seems like good options at tight end right now. But other than that, it's really just a dart throw with those guys.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else I'm missing on the free agent list that you think might be a little bit of a hot item?
Zach Moss is going to be the secondary bid for anyone who puts in for Chuba Hubbard. They're just going to put in a secondary bid for Zach Moss. So expect to see him go pretty high too. That's it.
Justin
Absolutely.
texted me asking about him, said, how much am I going to bid on Zach Moss? So I guess Justin's starting to feel out and get worried about that RB2 spot.
I'm a little disappointed here that he goes to you now. So we'll that'll be something to monitor going forward.
He's a fantasy slut, and we all know it.
All
CJ,
right.
were you saying something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, there were, 3 or 4 different tight ends on free agency that popped off over 20 points this past weekend. So, obviously with tight ends being such a hot commodity, wouldn't be surprised to see them flying off the board as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we'll move on to I wanted to touch briefly on Logan's team photo. Did either one of you notice this?
Yeah,
I did.
So it's
I did.
So for anyone that hasn't, it's a weirdly zoomed in, very pixelated photo of Troy Aikman. And whenever you're creating your team photo, you have to go in there, you have to create it as a certain type of picture and then save it in and copy in a URL code. Meaning he went out of his way to upload this random ass, terrible quality picture. Am I missing something here, or is it just weird?
I don't even want to try to touch this. I think he's just a wild card when it comes to that. I think it's hilarious when you see that face and see CD's nuts right next to it. So I think it's just, I don't know.
Hey, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the time that he put into it, between the name, looking at the face. Everybody here is getting a little quick laugh out of it. Good move.
Yeah, I'm laughing at him, not with him. Michael, what is your picture here?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a change. I was insulted via group text earlier this week. Thought I would change it to fit that, kind of lean into that role. Immediately realized that I have this up when I'm working, things like that. Just can't have that going forward. So I changed my name back to the Quad Squad, and I couldn't upload the picture that I originally had. So this is a picture of Saquon with a quad chain. He's wearing a quad chain.
Okay. What was your team name that you changed it to? I didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't know if we are we wanting to try to dive into that.
I didn't know if you made it something real weird or not.
So it's first team all rapist. Is what Matt.
Yeah, thank God you
described my
changed
team
it.
as.
Jesus.
No, first team all trade rapists. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Forgot an important word there.
Yeah, that's essential. And then I think that's it. Oh, a little shout out. Josh, put a new picture in. He has the pink ESPN helmet. It just looks
Gross.
Trashy. I guess it fits in with your trash team, but
It's gross. Even Chris changed his.
yeah, spruce it up a little bit. All right. Anything else before we dive into last week's matchups?
Oh man, let's do it.
Agenda? All right. Sweet. I'm going to share my screen. At some point. This is embarrassing. Y'all go ahead and mix in some. Oh, no, never mind. I got it. All right. Y'all seeing that?
We do.
All right. Excellent. So let's go ahead and go to our very first matchup on the dock. I believe it was Trenton versus Josh. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Michael, you take this one first.
Josh and Trenton.
Yep, the toilet bowl.
It sounds. I mean, I think I alluded to it earlier. When Trenton's scoring 105 with that stack, you got to beat him. Kirk Cousins really is the only reason that Josh's team looked relevant this week. He had a couple duds. I think Robert Woods might be, with Allen Robinson, in the biggest bust of the year going forward. I don't know if it's even time to trade him. I think you just got to kind of keep him on your bench and hope that he gets back to value. Sonny Michel playing in the flex over Kareem Hunt was just absolutely not the move. I don't know where he was trying to work with that. Tampa Bay has a stout run defense and a bad pass defense. So you knew that they were going to try to throw the ball. And then going over to Trenton's side, I mean, Jamar Chase continues to be a stud for him. I know I said it earlier. Patrick Mahomes, even with what we thought was a bad game, still scores 29 points. And then he got a little lucky with his kicker scoring 14 points. So there was kind of a gross matchup all around. Trenton's sitting at 2-1, but doesn't deserve any of it.
Yeah, no doubt. CJ, any thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, Josh left 50 points sitting on the bench, losing by 7. I'm sure that's a huge that's pretty painful to sit there and look at. Trenton should not feel good at all about walking in there 2-0, 105 points, just barely squeaking out a win over Josh. A lot of volatility on his team. I know Jamar Chase got the 2 touchdowns. Outside of that, Trenton's looking at a 90-point week.
And last week, I think he had something in the 80s, or maybe it was right at 90. So I agree. 2 bad weeks in a row for Tyreek. It shows how dependent his team is on that. What's funny is I saw earlier in the week, Josh had Kareem Hunt in the flex. He was about to start Chubb and Hunt. And then I guess he pulled him for Sony. So it's funny how those little things can come back to bite you.
Yeah, I think he learned his lesson, though. I think you can trust that team will support 2 running backs, and I think it's hard to watch, but at the end of the day, they're both going to be valuable. So something to look at going forward.
All right, let's move on to Nathan versus Austin. We already covered this a little bit, but man, Nathan just whooped his ass. It wasn't even kind of close. You finally had that Zeke game. He boomed and dropped 26 fantasy points. Keenan Allen's doing Keenan Allen things, even though there may be a new wide receiver 1 in town for the Chargers. Tyler Lockett had a bad game. George Kittle had his bounce back game. He's looking great. I think Lamar Jackson's going to continue to return value. Nathan's got a well-rounded team. 2 weeks in a row, I picked him to win. 2 weeks in a row, he's won. I reached out to him for some bribes. We'll see if he comes through and gives them to me. And yeah, we already kind of ripped up Austin's team whenever we did the lowest score of the week. But man, when you're looking at this, I do not like Damian Harris. He's been really bad in pass protection. I think with James White out, you probably hope that he gets those targets, and I don't think he will. Robert Tonyan's not going to do great for you. He's touchdown or bust. Juju could be injured. Austin's in trouble. Any thoughts on y'all?
Yeah, just to touch on the Damian Harris topic, Ramondre Stevenson, the preseason hero for the Patriots, look to see him get more touches. JJ Taylor, I think they're going to go back to the New England just rotation that they've been doing for years past. I wouldn't want any part of that, especially with a rookie quarterback. Just seems like the offense is going to be stagnant. We do need to touch on the fact that A.J. Brown got hurt and Juju got hurt. So Austin was a bit of an injury bug this week that may have affected it. Going over to Nathan's team, I still stand firm that I think he's doing himself a disservice by not trading one of those tight ends. I think he's limited with that. And this is purely objectively speaking. I think he gets more value by getting one of those guys off his team, whether he gets a lot of value with George Kittle or he trades Rob Gronkowski at a high point right now. I think that's something he needs to do. And I'm scared he's going to do it when it's too late.
I think you're probably right, because after this week, you're already having less value from Gronk. So immediately it's going to be harder to get something out of him. CJ, anything before I go to the next matchup?
I completely agree. I think he kind of missed out on the top of the market that he could have gotten from Rob Gronkowski. I saw that there's also a little bit of questionable possible injuries coming from him as well. Heart breaks for Austin, man. He was, looking for some consistency out of his top players, Kamara and Jefferson. He finally gets some good weeks out of both of them this week. And all the other pieces that he had working for him just completely go down the drain. Juju's got a cracked rib. AJ Brown is out for at least 4 weeks. It's going to be a rough go of it for Reeby.
Yeah, I'm still under the belief, and we got to move on, but I'm still under the belief he should trade Kyler. Kyler's lighting the world on fire. He's got 1,000 yards in 3 seasons. That's still going to be your easiest way to bridge points. So I've got to think that that's going to be his best move.
Couldn't agree more.
But we'll see what he does. All right, on to the next matchup. Michael, how about you take Justin versus Brandon?
Oh, boy. Justin, we've already talked about him with the high point of the week, but Josh Allen came back with a vengeance, and boy, did he look good. I don't know how much of that was Washington defense just not being what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season, but man, he looked good, completing. I think it was over 70% of his passes, scoring to 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. Looked phenomenal. I will say for Brandon, this was one of his better weeks, I think, going forward in terms of his points scored. 125 is looking pretty good. It looks like Kyle Pitts was not the value that we thought he would be. Even Terry McLaurin was kind of held in check against Tre'Davious White over in Buffalo, even with a good, game script and all. And then Najee Harris, that 28-point total, you shouldn't expect that going forward. 19 targets is absurd. And I think with those Steeler receivers getting a little bit healthier, I think that will lessen. One thing I do want to point on, Brandon has started the Buccaneers defense against the LA Rams and the Dallas Cowboys, and both times left with negative points. I think that's just a lack of game planning. And in that sense, that what do you expect when you're starting your defense? I don't care how good they are. They could be the 85 Bears. They're not going to stop those offenses right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And to piggyback on Najee, I was texting him and he about Najee, trying to get him. And he was telling me, I don't want to do it, which is fine, of course. But he was saying because Najee's going to get 8 to 10 targets a game, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that once Deontay's back, it's back to those short 3-5 yard dump offs.
Yeah, that's good Christian McCaffrey numbers, by the way. So that is absurd.
Okay, I'm glad we're in agreement there. CJ?
Yeah, I mean, looking at Brandon's team, he made that trade last week for Scary Terry, but I'll tell you, that's not the only thing that's scary about looking at that team. Yeah, he's going to probably need to go ahead and make a 1-for-2 trade for one of his running backs, especially right now at the peak of the market, to try and get him some depth, especially in the wide receiver market. Justin's team, I mean, it says it all. The man had 5 points out of DeAndre Hopkins and still put 170 on the week. Justin's team is looking like the team to beat right now, and there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Hey, CJ, I got a question for you real quick. With the San Francisco, running scheme being so dominant, Kyle Shanahan's always good at, making his running back successful. Do you think it's still valuable enough to trade Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon in a package to try to get some value for maybe a key starter that he's missing for Brandon?
If he can find the right buyer, sure. I know I traded him last week, giving him Trey Sermon. I just didn't want to wait that thing out. They're really with that hot hand, next man up. So if one of them really kind of moves out there, really hoping it's Trey Sermon. I like him. We're just going to have to see which way that offense goes. They're going to need a clear-cut starter week in or week out to get value.
Yep. And his wide receivers are his issue, right? They're all very low floor. You might get some big games from Terry. I think they're going to be not as frequent as you'd hope for, since they do want more of a run and defensive approach. So he's one of those guys with 2 running backs that probably should consider an upgrade of some sorts. Maybe plug in Elijah Mitchell. I don't know, though. That San Francisco backfield does get a little convoluted.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next matchup for the sake of time. CJ versus Logan. Congratulations, Siege, on your win. Logan had a disappointing performance. I don't know what to make of this team, because I love CeeDee Lamb. That could be bias, but it's going to be him or a Coop, or I think who got the touchdown this past week? It was Zeke, and then was it Jarwin that got a touchdown?
It was 2 for
Cedric Wilson. Well, Dalton Schultz had 2, and then Cedric Wilson had 1, kind of hawked 1 at the end there.
Yeah. So, Michael, I would love to get your opinion on this too, because I know you're holding a Cowboys wide receiver as well. But looking at the game this week, they put up 41 points. Really looks like they're spreading that ball all around. How confident are you in any of the top wide receivers or the options that you have there? Period.
Yeah, I mean, if you have CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper, you start. You don't really get too cute with that. I do think a little bit of this game was game scripted out, and also the Eagles just could not stop the run, and it was just too easy for the Cowboys. So you kind of run into those fluky games where it's just game scripted out. I will say there's going to be some variance. I think CeeDee Lamb is the high floor play with this offense, and then Amari Cooper is the high ceiling play. I don't think those tight ends are going to be sharking all those points going forward. So I think those 2 guys are going to be solid. When Michael Gallup actually gets back in the lineup, I think they actually go up. Even though Gallup might take some targets, I think they open up the field for those 2 guys to eat a little bit. So I'm not too worried with this offense in terms of, one person going forward.
Right. And, piggyback off what CJ said, they are spreading the ball around. Dak's a good quarterback. Dak finds the open read. Which, for the sake of fantasy, it's not great to have your wide receiver 1 not just getting peppered with all the targets. Is it too early to call Calvin Ridley a bust?
Absolutely not. No, it is. I'm sorry. It is too early to call Calvin Ridley a bust.
Too early.
Okay.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley is one of the best route runners in the league. He's going to get open even with an aging quarterback.
I'm not worried about the talent. I'm worried about that offense and Matt Ryan being washed. You kind of drafted him as a potential top 5 wide receiver. And I think you're getting high wide receiver 2 numbers 3 games in, and some decent matchups.
Hey, man, Brandon Cooks goes out there and puts out points with a no-name quarterback off the street every week. I think Calvin Ridley's going to be just fine in the end.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I do want to point on one thing, and this is the Derrick Henry, dilemma that I keep running into. We know he's a monster. I'm looking at his touches, though. He had 17 carries week 1, 35 carries week 2, 28 carries in week 3. I don't care who that is. That's not sustainable, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not. But that's kind of his MO. He just gets that many carries. I just got a Zoom update that we're only 10 minutes away from hitting our 40-minute mark. So we've got to go.
Okay.
All right.
Mike Williams was a 10th round pick.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Mike Williams was a freaking steal. Good job.
He might be that steal. He might be that steal that we were talking about.
Yeah, he's a red zone monster. He's always looked to by Herbert. So CJ, your team looks pretty solid. I do think Jonathan Taylor could also be labeled as a bust. We'll see though. Michael, do you want to go on that real quick?
Yeah, I want to know what podcast told you to trade your whole team for Jonathan Taylor.
Hey man, it's definitely not feeling good right now. Chris Carson is essentially just what I would have been okay with if Jonathan Taylor was right now, and he's not. Definitely lost that trade. I was thinking that Jonathan Taylor was going to be this workhorse back, averaging about 19 points a week. That is certainly not the case.
You weren't alone in that thought, by the way. I don't think anyone could be more frustrated by Naheem Hines than Jonathan Taylor owners. So I feel that pain.
On to the next matchup. We have Matt versus Chris. Matt won, but it was overall a pretty underwhelming matchup. Clyde had a good performance, which was a real kick in the nads for me, as did Mike Evans. Obviously, CMC getting hurt was the big thing for Chris. Allen Robinson also looks extremely disappointing. The Bears as a whole look disappointing. Anything you want to comment on with this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Miles Sanders, the Eagles just refused to give that man the ball. 2 carries is just not enough for your lead back for a team that does not have a proven quarterback. You got to give him more help going forward. I actually do think Miles Sanders has a bounce back next week. Allen Robinson just cannot catch a break with quarterback play, and it's just sad to see. The man's a top 10 receiver in the league, just doesn't get the help. Yeah, I mean, Matt got a win with a TJ Hawkinson down week, so those are those steals you want to have. Even when you play bad, you get those lucky weeks.
Absolutely. And then CJ, give us a quick rundown of Michael and I's matchup.
All right. So you guys actually put up a pretty good matchup this week. I mean, 140 out of Alex, 161 out of Michael's team. Matthew Stafford is looking like a fantasy MVP right now. I mean, let alone league MVP. The man is out there. Cooper Kupp's making him look like the best quarterback in the league right now. You finally got a decent week out of Antonio Gibson, but if it wasn't for that 14-point play, you got a big 3 points out of Antonio. So, Michael, I think you're feeling good about Antonio, but I think he's complete and utter garbage.
On that point, I think it might be time to start looking at trade options. In all honesty, as much as I love Antonio Gibson, I don't think that offense is catering to him like they need to. So that might be something to look forward to. You make actually a good point.
And then not talk about his 31-point total from his defense / kicker, which is asinine. Bullshit.
On the same team too. Yeah, I mean, Michael's wide receivers are looking pretty consistent there. He's getting a good floor from his running backs. Michael's team is looking pretty strong. Alex, I mean, I'm going to let you kind of tell us how you're feeling about your team. I don't think you're going to be feeling that great. I mean, you've got a few things working for you here. Cooper Kupp has obviously been a steal for you, but how are you feeling about the rest of your team, the depth of your team?
I don't think anyone's too happy with their depth, especially their running back depth, unless your name's Josh. But I'm happy with Chase Edmonds' receiving work. I got to think better days are ahead for David Montgomery, but that Bears offense looked like dog shit. And then the Tyson Williams matchup was gold on paper, but Ravens rotate that backfield a lot. I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling as good.
Hey, on that point, sorry, with that Tyson Williams point, playing you this week, I was looking at, what your matchups might be, and you have Kenny Golladay on the bench, and I understand that he was a 50-50 going into that week, so stay away from him. Jacoby Myers had Marshawn Lattimore shadowing him. The Michael Pittman with Carson Wentz playing might have been my play. Can you kind of touch on if that was ever an option or if it was just you thought Baltimore would run all over him?
Yeah, I didn't want to mess with Wentz with his 2 fucked up ankles.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already not great, and then now he's
looking at Bambi out there. Yeah.
So that's why I went with that. But, I feel good about the stack. Packers look like they're back on track. So we'll see. Hopefully better days are ahead. Let's do a quick pick 'em for week 3.
Let's do it. All right, CJ versus Matt. Alex, who do you got?
CJ versus Matt. I think in this matchup, I'm gonna go with. Well, it's loading up, so I kind of want to see who's playing who. Dak against Carolina. Give me CJ. I think Matt's got some tough matchups with his best players. I mean, Dalvin Cook versus Cleveland. Cleveland's got a pretty good run defense. Tom Brady going into New England. That could be more of a low score game than expected. Who are you taking?
Yeah, I think I got Matt. I love you, CJ, but I think Matt still, in my opinion, has the best team in the league. Even with a dud last week, I think Dalvin Cook comes back, even against a tough run defense like Cleveland. He's pretty successful. I think Kansas City is going to run on Philadelphia just like they thought, or just like Dallas did last week. And Clyde Edwards gets that bounce back week, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, if Dalvin Cook is back this week, it's going to be a hard week for Hard Knocks. But I think they're going to rise to the occasion. I think the final score, 170-165, Hard Knocks pulls it out.
Ooh, love it. Love the score.
No bias, of course. All right, next matchup, and we got 4 minutes left, so we got to get rolling. We have Chris versus Justin. Michael, who you taking?
Yeah, I got Justin. CMC being out, it's tough. You know, it's not really Chris's fault, but he runs into the worst when it rains, it pours. He has to play the best team in the league, points total wise.
Yeah, I agree. Justin really should win this. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. CJ, anything different from you?
Man, Chris really needed that win last week. He needed to try and float. He's not going to beat Justin this week. He's going to be 1-3. It's going to be a tough go of it for Chris.
Yeah. All right, Logan versus Josh. I'm going to take. Yeah, I'm taking Logan. I think Derrick Henry against the Jets is going to be a freaking field day. Yeah,
you got to think Logan. Logan's 1-2. His team's not that bad. He's actually been pretty good in the points scored going forward. I think Josh has some holes that he needs to figure out.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, on what's going to be the trash can bowl of the week. But obviously, I think that's going to be our next matchup. On this one, though, I think Josh is going to pull the upset on Logan.
Interesting. All right, so we got 2 for Logan, 1 for Josh. Let's move on to Brandon versus Austin.
The real trash can bowl.
You got to get a big day here from Kamara. I mean, you really do. Damian Harris versus Tampa Bay is going to be a freaking dud. Justin Jefferson, you're hoping that the Vikings-Cleveland game is a pretty high-scoring game. I think Kyle Pitts will continue to dud. Terry could eat against Atlanta. Najee could probably eat against Green Bay, even though the Steelers' offense looks terrible. I think Eckler will eat against Las Vegas. Yeah, go ahead and I don't love the Tannehill against the Jets just because I don't think they'll have to throw a ton, and A.J. Brown will probably be out. But I think I'm taking Brandon here. What about y'all?
Yeah, I think I'm taking Brandon. I think one thing to look at, Kyler Murray, you can downgrade him a little bit against the Rams. I know he's a stud, but the Rams defense is legit. So downgrade him a little bit. He's been carrying Austin. I think Brandon gets the 2-2.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be Brandon here. Unfortunately, Reeby's going to need about 110 points from 3 players. Reeby just really needs Tannehill to not lay an egg, and essentially the rest of his team can just go about their averages.
Yep.
Yeah, and you worry a little bit about Kyler versus the Rams. He might actually come down to earth for this one. All right, let's go to the Quad Squad versus Big Dick Trent. Obviously, Michael has some biased input here.
I will say, it depends on his stack. I think his stack in that Thursday night game going against the Jags, like a local high school varsity defense, I think they're going to eat. But if I can get him to 120, I think I got him.
Well, his stack is going against Philly.
Ooh, that's the point.
Right.
Oh, I thought you said the Jags. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I'm actually taking Trenton here just because your matchups look pretty tough. Stafford will eat, but I think I worry about Saquon versus a very stout New Orleans front. New England, they could do some damage against Chris Godwin. It depends who they decide to narrow in on. And the Cowboys defense actually looks pretty decent. So we'll see if they can slow down DJ Moore at all. CJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, Michael, I'm sorry. I think Trenton's going to get a backdoor win here. I think he's going to have another 80-point week out of Mahomes and Tyreek combined. The rest of his team's going to be very meh, but it's just going to be enough to beat you.
and I'm signing off on it.